How is Elder Scrolls Online after 10 years from a veteran's point of view? It's bad for veterans and good for new players and casuals. I will explain in this opinion review the game's core and default problems and list the activities that you can do. Don't worry, I won't throw up each of their description for half an hour. I'll just list them down to explain the problem for each of them, and later what solutions I propose. I'll use the word casual a lot, so to define it first, in this review I'll refer to it as a player that doesn't care to improve, plays whatever finds that the game offers, puts up only the effort that is available, avoids and or doesn't care about competitiveness. First, let's see the activities, because the problems and solutions that I will show later are tied to them. So in ESO you have this PvE, which includes dungeons, trials and overland, meaning world bosses, world events such as dolmens, geysers or other incursions, questing, public dungeons, devs, etc. Arenas, including the Infinite Archive, which we'll come back later to, and special dailies like heists, sacraments or Bastion Nimic. And in PvP there's Cyrodiil, Imperial City, Battlegrounds, and then we have another major activity, housing, and a lot of minor ones like Tales of Tribute, dueling, outfitting, trading, fishing, character building, antiquities and scrying, achievements with its mindless grinding, crafting, justice and the stealing system. Dungeons are mostly fine, some too long, some too easy, but you can pick which to do and there's variety. But have two problems. One is how the queue works. Joining as tank it's instant pop, but if someone declines I should be placed with priority in the queue, but it doesn't find one for a few minutes. I call this the ghost queue, which only puts you eventually with players that also got declined, because if I leave the queue and rejoin it, I get instant pop again. Also, during a started dungeon, if someone leaves, it's extremely unlikely that during prime time there is not one DD in the queue for a pledge or join for random. But if a DD leaves during my dungeon, it doesn't find one, almost during the whole dungeon. I've made forum bug reports about these problems that are since forever and no interest. Players eventually get fed up with this happening and stop using the dungeon finder. Maybe it's intentional from ZOS in order to push players into guilds and join pre-mades with group finder. The other problem is how the dungeons have mobs bugged to run away, scatter or completely ignore you when you engage their packs. Again, I believe this is intentional by them to artificially raise the dungeon completion time, a lame practice. Look here how I start this. One ad from the trash pack is not joining combat. He's ignoring me as I'm fighting his pack. Once one has died, he also engaged combat. So it's like they made a certain number of ads to engage players at a time. Look at this pack now. I will engage it, and from the highlight one, the left and right ones will run away. You see? I engage the pack, and this one with this one has run away from the stack. When I kill some of them to make room in the pack engagement variable, whatever, see, they are coming now. This is how it works in all of the dungeons. and sometimes they even completely ignore you, even if you're straight up attacking them. It's like they are aggroing the NPCs or something. This is how you often you seemingly remain stuck in combat by waiting at the door. And from this also derives the rusher stupid logic that skipping 30 seconds worth of fighting is worse than waiting at the door 2 minutes to exit combat. Moving on, here's an idea that dungeons could benefit from a good manners points system, where leaving or contributing with too little heal or DPS would lower your rank. You could honor a player at the end of the dungeon for his contribution, or for how friendly, helpful, or good was it. And finishing a dungeon can place on the screen a panel showing damage taken, done, healing, like battlegrounds one. And having low manners rank can make you leaving get a queue penalty longer and the count wide, lower your gold drop inside the dungeon, or who knows what else. And the higher rank would have benefits. Trials as well, variety of difficulties, but completing the more challenging versions require a group, which is a problem here. Without Discord, there wouldn't be an endgame community. At least this is how it feels, because outside of Discord I don't see any progs running. Guild system in-game is bad at managing a trial group, or any group for the matter, something they also admitted in this 10 years later. I have a solution which is obvious, but I will present it later as well. Arenas. The solo ones are fun and a good challenge for score pushing. Black Rose feels just like a 3 times longer dungeon. Dragonstar is horrible. Infinite Archive could have been one of the core features and activities of this game, having the possibility to grind and fight based on your skill and preference. However, what they did is another dungeon that forces on you trash packs that just get harder, and in order to play it requires a great amount of time outside of the basic daily quest. It's also heavily reliant on RNG, with visions deciding if your run is going to be fun and in a reasonable time to reach your arc goal, or a slog if you want to continue. Some visions are too good, others are completely useless, and they haven't balanced them since launch. They only added a few more. There should have been a replace or a refresh choices thing. They could have done it to let the player make encounters harder the more ink you release, or something like that. And you could have grinded as much currency as you were willing to put the effort in. This arena is like a solo or a duo normal dungeon for the time it takes, and then scales up in time to veteran dungeon in about half an hour. Then it blocks you in the time gates based on visions. I understand higher arcs give more rewards, so require more time to complete. But if I wanted a lower arc than the higher ones, I would have to reset back to the first arc. It's overall a balanced experience, but feels very limited in the potential it expresses. Overland is fine. Yes, I know many wanted a harder Overland, and also in this 10 years later they said they'll make it. But they don't know that there is actually harder Overland, like soloing dragons, or many world bosses or incursions. And if someone wants even harder solo content than the solo arenas score push, can do a dungeon or the archive. Many players want a harder Overland, but that's their personal problem, because they don't know what to play in the game. While all of the other many players don't want to spend 2 minutes picking up a flower, or waiting at Way Shrine. And as ideas can come, they could have made an Overland more difficult per player adjust. Like you could activate a Namira Nightmare to lower your damage done, have extra drop rate, more mobs as illusions or such. Uh, just juicing up the content like Path of Exile does. But what you going to do about the toggle? Get yourself a 50% damage reduced for 50% more drop rate? Who would farm overland anyway for this? What these players actually want is an exclusivist feeling where they roam a land where 90% of players can't because they're too weak. So they feel strong above others, like an elite's hub. Other than that, Overland sometimes seems empty because they increased the amount of instances, meaning instead of 2 instances with 100 players each, there's 10 instances with 20 players each. They did this either because of performance complaints or because they forgot to revert the change back from events when people would gather in large numbers in a single spot. I think it's the latter, they often forget to change things back. Refreshing the instance doesn't always work properly. Chat feels emptier also because these issues. There isn't a global chat or many global channels like in other games. These are probably intentional because to a degree they also want this game to feel like a single player. For casuals, avoiding interaction in Overland would be tough, but chat could be just toggled off. Special dailies. Those are instanced, so they're not Overland. Those are fine. Activities like sacraments, heists, or Bastion mimics. Nothing wrong here, really. Maybe could say they're too little developed and the NPCs are kinda stupid. Cyrodiil. The largest part of the PvPers play here. I dislike it and never played it other than filling achievements. I guess it's liked by most because most are just casuals, so they can effortlessly zerg around. Either side of zerging favors mostly the ranged and highly mobile playstyles. I find the biggest problem with cyrodiil that you are just waiting and passing time gates more than actually fighting. And the fights are rarely fair, but only here can sweaties stomp over casuals. Ball groups are not a problem. I know how they're seen, but how do you expect a pre-made group of players to play? Or you want Zero to be just multiple channels of duels? Casuals complain that organized players are not commonly defeated by unorganized players. I know ball groups are hated because they use the game mechanics to their favor, which have an increased effect on the way they play, seen as abusive, but that's the game's fault for allowing those mechanics to work like this. And it's a good thing that there's an environment where groups can actually thrive based on how they play. Imperial City. This is the better form of cyrodiil. Less walking, more section fighting, considering you can't get out of a district while in combat. I know you can with a Q trick, but I mean that a district keeps inside the amount of players that are fighting. Problem is when others join in, so we're back to the unfair fighting. Again, maybe intentional to encourage grouping, but bigger numbers will again win under fair conditions. So there could be some really good fighting around here. However, you need to not care about Telvar here because it's Gankar City or tough brawlers. It's mostly top of the food chain and hardly an area for soloers. Here is much less zerging than in Cyrodiil. It's not a popular area and I doubt it's because Telvar lost. It can be played just like Cyrodiil here, but you see here the casuals can't zerg freely, so only the few veteran sweaters roam around. And battlegrounds. They changed the BG mode but kept the same problems. Not really needed to talk about 8v8, kinda feels like the previous mode but slightly more fair. But now the competitive mode, in the 4v4, there's only problems. Flag modes are bland and the map is small with flags so close to the base, there's no point killing a player because resurrect time is so low that a few seconds later he's back on the flag. Also, it's easy to stalemate and just hold your ground if your team captured the first one, since there's no other counterplay. Flags should have had various debuffs around them over time, like Defile or Knockback, to add some actual playing engagement. Crazy King could have had moving flags or maybe some more smaller ones around for short time or something. Killing a player could give you a point to the score. Ideas can come here, but my point is the current mode is plain and bland. Get to the flag, stay there, don't bother killing players, they're back on the flag before the score ticks. That's it and always has been. Deathmatches are easily one-sided and unfair. The move out debuff timer, by the way, what an uninspired name, could have named it commence battle or something, is so long that mainly ranged players can just stay up in base in safety and attack the enemy team easily, since the map is small enough that you can reach the center from base with range. There should have been applied the in-base immunity to not attack or be attacked like the Imp City has. And the round takes 5 minutes, the buff is 2 minutes. You can come just once out of base like this if you stay dead or survive 1 minute. Often many just use this as cover to not feed and just stalemate their team. Having one good player in a team can easily take out the weakest one in enemy team, and now it's 4v3 easily won. It's some sort of Wild West, whoever shoots first starts snowballing. Even if teams are kinda equal in skill, it's still whoever dies first leaves his team 3v4 on disadvantage. For both modes, it's just a direct clash of power. It's missing strategy or opportunity. Also, terrain mastery has been cut. Even if cheesing teleports of platforms gaps, that's still a layer of skill among others. Never was, and still after the change it's not competitive. They band-aid fixed abusable metal score by just crit healing, but didn't fix shielding or pets. And the ranking is based on time played, not on skill. You can lose 100 games out of 100 and still be number 1 on the leaderboard. Matchmaking rating is awful. I most of the times get against weak players, and it's more waiting to win than fighting them. But I guess there's too little players in the queue to actually separate them by rating. There are fewer occasions for interesting solo plays. I posted my final BG video before this one, and it doesn't have the interesting moments I've used to save. Actually, it shows how BGs are now. Queue has been broken since its launch. It doesn't refill groups properly, or players that didn't accept the join aren't getting refilled. Sometimes it does, who knows, maybe it has this ghost queue thing like dungeons. The thing is that all the eager players that wanted to see battlegrounds encounter this kind of issues where it's more waiting than playing, so they won't come back even after they fix it. If they do it in any reasonable time, and it's obviously not going to. Instead of properly checking these things before launch, they launch it like this and see players' reactions to measure their behavior. And for the last major activity, that's neither PvE or PvP or combat at all, housing, the grand housing, one of the bigger features of the game. Among the biggest, actually. Much of the crown store and cash and gold spending in game is to housing. Don't really see a problem here actually, maybe it's getting too much attention from game leads rather than combat. But this is the better paying customer. Many players want increased furnishing limit, but I think that's debatable. You don't need 20 individual apples on a table. They could combine some furnishings to count as one though. They did already say they're not increasing it and not having plans to. Housing is seen as endgame, and for a big category of casuals, it is actually endgame. I've read some good ideas like furnishing bag added to ESO Plus, deconstructible furnishings. Now quickly over the minor activities. The first one mentioned will be Tales of Tribute. because it could have been a major activity. This could have been good, an interesting minigame that's fairly nice to play, at least against NPCs, but they're too dumb, and for the better, because here is the problem. The system relies too heavily on luck. Whoever gets the good card first starts snowballing. You can only recover if you have luck twice in a row and your enemy doesn't have luck even once, which is highly improbable. You would need to get a good card that he didn't and then have it to your draw luck to combo. Your enemy can ignore the draw luck because the carry card is already his, so he's one step ahead just because he got first the good card. They should have limited how much luck can carry. Could have made visible the next Taven card to land and have your last card to enter your cooldown before moving them to be the first one on the draw. Other ideas can come here, but my point is that it's unpleasant to try having a good game only to be defeated or win by Tavern or draw luck. And briefly, I've seen casuals complain that they can't even beat novice NPCs and they don't understand how the game is played. You don't even need a tutorial, everything is already explained here if you mouse over. The determining factor. What people win by skill is actually just wider experience over the game mode. Dueling, a small pastime activity, slightly fun if you choose yourself the best setup for 1v1. Otherwise limited in game, no system around it, but you can spend lots of time practicing and just pointlessly fighting forever in stalemate since nobody dies 1v1 if they don't want to. Outfitting. What kind of activity is this? Well, it is. Takes a lot of time to do and consists in many not obvious elements. Playing dress up game can take quite the effort if you aim for a specific look. It's another big paying customer here. Most events have an outfit style page to it. Achievements give colors to dye. Dungeons give style motifs and so on. Much gameplay time is spent on outfitting for many players. Again, I don't see a problem here, maybe just because too much of game resources are dedicated to this, designing styles and visuals, but hey, fashion is the endgame. I personally prefer to slap a polymorph and tick all visual boxes, even though my main reason for polymorph is to hide the characters shouting after every ability. Trading is difficult. Even with add-ons is difficult and a big time cost. They don't want an auction house because it eliminates this activity of flipping and searching around for a supposedly better deal, and to not let the big traders monopoly everything. However, other games like Guild Wars 2 or Path of Exile have auction house and trading is doing fine. Prices are anyway going to settle or adjust depending on supply, demand, rarity and necessity. Even a per map auction house would be better if not global. Trading was also made worse with changes to listing timer and abundance of materials from events. There's so much stuff and so easy to get anything that trading barely feels worth doing. To mention veteran activity, selling motifs was worth, but they improved and I would say nerfed the drop guarantee from hard mode by adding a chance to drop in veteran too. Also many expensive motifs dropped in the game during events. Another reason to run veteran dungeons was for purple items, so you can sell the upgrading material after deconstructing, but now even those are worth so little that you would just vendor everything. Fishing, bland activity, slow and minimum interaction. Intended just to have something to do when you don't want to do anything. Other than making gold or achievements, not really an activity. I would say it's a problem, it's not more intricate, but not every activity has to be with effort and attention. Character building. Building your character is a necessity for progression and improvement, but it's also a separate activity. You can always try another set, different spells, another class or role, even though most sets are useless. Unless you're pushing for leaderboard, then most of the sets can complete veteran content if you're playing well enough. But the building itself of your character stops here, at the sets and spells slotted. Champion points isn't a major factor in your playstyle. Mythics can be something to define your playstyle, but most are too niched, maybe for the better. Also, maybe it's good that building your character isn't deep enough, because then it would be too complicated to make something work or to switch to a different playstyle. Pretty much any set, if used in the proper role it was intended for, can be useful, but the idea is for the player to know how to play, and knowing to build your character shows if you understand how the game works. Antiquity is a scrying, a minigame slightly interesting, nothing more to it. Mandatory for mythics though, which are mandatory for improvement and veterans on most builds. Actually, even mythics required to carry casuals have this activity mandatory. The problems here? Feels forced to compete, but no other problems really. It's easy and slightly interesting, can even farm gold with it. Achievements. Another thing you can do in this game is farm achievements, but most are completely useless and just tick a box. Most are just a milestone than an achievement. You can't show it off, you don't get anything for completing most of them. This is the problem, they're just mindless grinds, but they can fill your time with stuff to do if you want that. Rather than an activity, I would say they're a presentation of milestones you got to and the amount of grinding you've done. Crafting. Doing grids can count as an activity indeed. It's something you do and makes you rewards for it too. You can also consider yourself in this game a crafter, making set items for players, furnishings for trading, or just doing master grids for the fun. No problems here, but could maybe use some sort of better searching of crafts and materials by text, or search a specific style material rather than scrolling one by one for when it's not a quest to show it directly with the tick box. And the last one, also underdeveloped, justice and stealing. Yes, this is an activity. You can farm gold and play the guards avoiding movement. All major towns have an outlaw's refugee, pretty pointless, but for the immersion of it, kinda breaks on itself with the idea of having a big stealing organization, bigger than the actual city management, all working with no problems right under them. Now with activities problems mentioned, let's talk about the core and default game problems, including for the company running it. Balance. They have no clue how to make it. Expected for a casual game made by casual leads. As long as everything works to a minimum level, it's considered viable. Most trials contain one class DDs, and in PvP you can't win because the game hard carries a class or two. When they change stuff for PvP, they make changes without any sense or have a stupid explanation in the patch notes. SO is not a PvP game, even though it started like that and it wanted to be. There is not any high-end PvP devs, and the ones that are on PvP have no clue about it. I've seen the lead combat designer not knowing how to refill stamina or making his way around terrain. PvP is now aimed at casuals. How does the sorcerer, ranged nuker sounds, which also works melee, with high damage abilities from max range and combos, but he also has the best mobility around. Fair enough so far, but that movement spell also AoE stuns every player in a wide area and even behind the caster. Too good by now, right? But wait, the stun is also unavoidable, can't block or dodge it. Consider the class also has control abilities like negate. But if you think devs insult all the players in PvP with this, there's more. This is also the most defensive class in the game, with the strongest burst, self-mitigation and best sustain. Why put up any effort when you can just join the game's meta carry train, since they think this is normal and don't see a problem? Or this may be part of their player engagement by making everyone build and change, so later they change it to give you activity. Same is Nightblade, but instead of movement there's invisibility. This on paper is a bit more fair because it has counters, but in practice those counters remove something else from you, leaving you weaker against this class that can just avoid your detection anyway through other means for a while. And other classes, instead of being good, just have one giant cheese like Dragon Knight, Ash Cloud or Templar Beam. Bugs that are known and not solved for years, mainly because they can't or it can't be done. Like one of the main ones, for example, look here, line of sight edges. Having a target at the edge of a line of sight makes the spell cast, plays its sound and animation, but it doesn't cast. As you see here, my magicka attempts to be drained and it's restored later. Sometimes in PvP with some spells against moving targets, the resource is even being consumed, but the spell doesn't go, like it happens with Fossilize. But even though the spell doesn't get cast, I am still getting the buff that this spell would trigger if casted. And apparently some effects like Vateshran proc works, but only when it attempts to be triggered and it then stops. This is mainly happening because there's a global half a second or such delay between you and the server. And what you do, and the moment server receives it, messes it up. Like look here how I'm spamming these spells, and it triggers my global cooldown, preventing the next spell from being cast. Even without line of sight, the problem can happen. The spell queue can entangle in itself, preventing my last cast from going. See here how I'm casting Rune and then Vigor, but Vigor doesn't go, because I made the cast during that server delay. It still had Rune in my spell queue when I pressed Vigor, even though Vigor was the most recent ability cast. The other main bug is the stuck in combat. So I've triggered this pack of mobs. The archers went away because I went out of their range. But these adds not. They continue to attack me. Some of them retreat. But when I attack their pack, they are triggered to come back. See, the archers are coming back from that distance, because I'm triggering them with this mob here. Also, the rest of the pack is coming back as I'm in combat with other adds from the pack. If I send back this add as well, because I'm taking it out of range, the adds that were already on their way to me are still continuing to come. And engaging them triggers the other adds. And so on. You can keep up a long chain of stuck in combat that's easily happening in dungeons. Another stuck problem in dungeons is that some mobs remain in walls, keeping you in combat for a long time, and you can't take them out or damage them. It happens often for mobs to be force locked on you, even if you are completely out of their range. But as long as you're taking actions like fighting other enemies, they still keep you in combat, even if you don't have other adds from their pack engaged. In PvP this is worse, because granting a buff or a heal to someone, and that someone is again stuck in combat with someone else, there's a whole chain of stuck in combat. And even though 99% of the chain has stopped any type of combat, one of the chain keeps in combat the whole entangled in it. Another minor thing is how pets' intelligence is dumb. Look at this Warden Bear. how he goes for the most far away ranged enemy just to stun it, so I can't chain it, then changes target. I can only control a pet to stop attacking or attack a specific target, which after it's dead, it's back to auto pick. Can't select things like only attack who attacks me or stay just in melee range or something. A pet system overhaul isn't needed as it's a little problem and too few playstyles with it, but wanted to mention the dumb behavior they were concepted with. And about pets, the temporary ones like Blast Bones also have dumb behavior. It would have helped Necro and make the spell better generally if you would cast it and trigger the cooldown once pet is spawned, then be able to cast it again regardless of the current pet status. Players that want to improve have no clue how to do so. Players end up watching whatever video or enter some website. For example, tanks end up using some stupid set like Dragon Star Shield. If you depend on this armor, it means taunting every 5 seconds to be capped, and you should be capped armor as a tank anyway. So you're left with the heal out of this set, but if you need heal, what do you cast? An actual healing spell or the taunt? On my tank, I've been using Backpack 2 one-piece set, Trainee and Druid, for about a year now I think, and I'm surviving more than fine. The skill advisor that I implemented to help players start on their role is kinda useful as it gives a basic hint on what spells you should use, but it's far from any type of improvement. Players should be taught to check the whole spellbook for the good spells they might need depending on situation. The stars above your character sheet is useless as well. You find out nothing from here about being properly set up. Also, there's some information that doesn't correlate to the other similar stuff. One is incomplete hybridization of the game, but also about stats, like for example near mace and sharp sword. Insignificant increase, but if we ignore that near hound is weaker, even though it requires more effort to acquire, it's an oversight in practice. Jewelry enchants for resistance doesn't have the same power budget as set equivalent of spell damage or regen. Items like Oaken crutch weak players into remaining weak, since they don't need to care about buffing, uptimes or positioning in most content. A good thing in this game are mastery layers like terrain positioning or weaving. Casuals think pressing one click every second before a spell is too hard or abusing a bug. They even believe animation cancelling is real. You can't bypass global cooldown with or without animation cancelled. There's a lot of videos that teach weaving if they really don't understand it in game. Even I have one. I also have a guide that explains weaving and animation cancelling. Now, while there should be a better skill advisor with actually useful spells for veteran content, I also propose a kind of character audit panel instead of the stars above your character sheet. I made in Paint a sketch about what it should be. It would be something like this, where for the character you've opened it on, it shows various checks for combat efficiency about your character, and would also have a few extras like crafting passives, advanced checks like missing different passive from it when you use armory or attributes, or if you have 2 5-piece sets maybe, or whatever. It wouldn't affect performance because it will only do the checks on the character when you open it, and it would be available once CP300 when DLC veterans become available. You can tick on or off the extras and the main star would fill up with the points you're checking. This panel could even be seen by other players in game. If you set it to on from settings, would be off by default. I know this sounds like elitism in order to gatekeep, but if I'm doing a veteran trial, I want decent players that have put up a minimum effort for the group rather than being carried. The game has gotten indeed more pay to win. Crown Store may be cosmetics only or time conveniences, but every time the latest release is pay to win, at least in PvP. As they release a new set, mythic or system, it is high chance on purpose stronger. And if you don't spend real cash on the chapter or soon season, or someone else give it to you, you can't acquire and use them in any way in game. Take for example the most recent this 10-year system, low budget scribing system. It removes the weakness of most classes and brings various useful effects that without it you can't have them. In PvE maybe it's not mandatory, but in PvP you can't fight someone that comes with these advantages. Game is getting overwhelming. They also admitted it in the 10 years letter. It's a game made ongoing for soloers and casuals, but they're getting thrown a billion sets, quests, effects and systems, areas where to go, take something or stuff to complete to acquire something. Some players in this game can't find their way around menus. They are getting so confused that even during events they ask where to get tickets from or need a video telling them about an event that a few lines of text could have done it if they open the news article. Now don't give me the visual learner stuff. You can check in-game the event from announcement panel when you log in. Why do you need a YouTube video for it? And about events, most non-periodic are dull and bland. It's just about hoarding and thus incentivizes you to do it. The content that you would normally do is still the same thing. All the event does is making it have double drops on everything. Not talking about the annual events like the Halloween one or New Year, which add the special area, bosses and some other activities, which are some more fun, but the zone ones or surprise short ones that all they do is tell you where to grind and hurt the economy. They could change some stuff in the game during an area event. For example, in High Isle, pirates could have been invading cities or something, or in Grey or vampires invading or interfering with players overland, or some other ideas, but my point was that the word event in these grind fests means nothing. Group Finder was launched late, but feels not enough developed, not enough advertised. Players don't know about it, or know about it but can't make use of it or don't care. This could benefit from a notification feature, cause you don't know when a group appears without constantly checking on it. So there should be a checkbox in a category to notify you in chat that a group was made in that category. By this point I suppose it's known enough, but avoid that because people still group in guilds or Discord. I did however often completed veteran DLC trials with the group finder, but also sometimes it's completely empty, even in prime time. The obvious solution I was talking was for trials, maybe even dungeons or really any activity like the group finder does, an event organizer inside the guild. Basically group finder integrated in the guild interface, but for guild members and able to schedule and prepare it ahead of time, like that Discord bot thing. High rank would have the create and edit own permission, and higher rank edit others and remove permission. It would look something like this. You can click create if you have the permission. Then if you check out an event, it has its own page where players are shown, and you can sign with a specific role up to a limit set by who created it, just like Group Finder does. Who can edit an event can sign off players as well. Much to develop such a thing, but at a base this could be a step towards out of Discord dependency. Now to some more doom and gloom issues about the company and the big reason why I dislike them. Customer support. They don't apply their rules equally. I reported in the past toxic players for repeated harassment, and they haven't done anything about it even when I replied to them their own terms. They just don't answer or robotically repeat that they don't see a problem. I'm pretty sure their customer service don't even play the game. I've gotten this answer a message that actual people check the cases and they don't ignore a report, but that's an impertinent lie. I have 100% proof of viable reports entirely ignored. For example, in the original report I write the name, but they ask again for the name, and when I send them the name and the video, they reply to me asking for the name and the video. I understand 99% of reports are stupid and they just give canned or automatic reply so they don't bother with it, but I end up replying several times to a ticket until I'm barely taken into consideration. Also, they don't know how the game works. They once told me a few months ago that the player was maybe crouching to activate cloak, which is false, and the reported player was Templar anyway. Also, they told me that if I don't like the behavior, I should just leave the match, lol. They are the worst customer service I've ever seen, and it got worse over the years. They don't solve other problems too. There's many players that have been playing since a long time and paying every month, but they're not considered eligible to gift from Crown Store, even though they've been told to address the issue with customer support. In most of my interactions with them, I was treated unfairly, and sometimes I've sent direct mails to ZOS and Bethesda, which I didn't get a reply to, or the situation seemed actioned just in that specific case. Other times I contacted other types of customer authorities, but they told me to ask for a refund. But I didn't want my money back, I wanted justice to be done, but whatever. And I understand that the better paying customer is more important, but with me they didn't even care to listen, even on forum when I complained publicly. They barely did something after devs like Kevin replied, and oftentimes they removed my posts without any viable reason. Now about their terms of service are so severe, to put it nicely. You don't own anything and you can't do anything against them. If you furnish a house and they make money showing it off in a trailer, they owe you nothing and you can't ask for anything. They would not do this, but their terms say that they can. If you post a YouTube video showing their content, it's their content in the video, not yours. Sounds fair, but sounds like it's their video too. I don't make money off YouTube, but how this sounds is that who does owes ZOS the money. Even if you post a guide on the forum, they can use it without your consent. All letters you type are theirs. This doesn't apply though if what you post on their behalf is illegal or against their rules. Also, whatever you buy from them in-game can't be refunded. They may accept it through a ticket, but that's because they accepted it, not because they must. I understand these are not really their fault because they're a corporation and must state all those rules to be accepted by the law, but I've played other games and those weren't so severe in their terms. By how this sounds to me, even if you draw some fan art on paper on your desk at home, that's their property. And if you would sell it at your local store as a painting, the money are owed to them and they have no obligation to compensate you or your approval. I have no knowledge in this kind of law rules, but this is how I understood them. Yes, I've actually read them. Watch out what you type on chat. If anyone reports you, you'll be lucky to escape with a warn. There's no such thing as a mute, but I heard of social bans before. They sometimes took sponsorships from energy drinks companies. Don't know if that's as bad as it sounds, but unhealthy drinks or consumables should not get advertisements, just like tobacco or other products. But the problem is, it happens in a game. In the future we may see ads in-game, just like we see to videos now. Their vision for player engagement is making something meta, attractive, or globally useful, so that most of the player base crafts, builds, changes to this thing, and then later they change it to some other thing, like new carrot in front of same donkey, to artificially make players play the changes rather than making players do the content and activities for fun. They think this is how they keep players engaged, like other games do, such as World of Warcraft, where they put players to grind again. In ESO they just tell you which to play next based on the changes. They are very slowly tracking the changes and correct them too late, when everyone is frustrated. thinking they do us a favor by changing the frustrating thing that they did in the first place. Same with bugs or something missing or any stupid balance change. You have to wait the next patch for the correction, which they were told about even since PTS. Or if it's urgent, then in the next 8-hour maintenance. This may be and surely is the reason for fixing or balancing a problem, to wait for players to do the changing so they come later with the fix as if doing us a favor. They moved devs from ESO to their new project. If some devs that worked on and maintained some systems have left, then the current ones don't know or can't fix or improve those systems, so they have to contact the previous ones for it, and it takes time and mistakes. Like many others, I won't buy or support another ZeniMax or Bethesda product, even if it will be an actual quality game and properly maintained. I dislike the company and the way they treated this game, and I'm not supporting it anymore with my time or money, now or for future games. They will just change the name probably in the future when they fully flop. 10 endeavors they added to avoid gambling laws, and now they're increasing them over time or making them harder so that you don't do them anymore, pushing you to Crown Store. Not sure if it's a bad practice, but the decline is visible. They make hidden changes, sometimes added before patch, and mentioning them at the patch release. When they release content, they don't release motifs or make an event in the zone a few months later, just to make players artificially register more time in the content area after you've already been there probably for sets or to see how it is. Instead of making content fun to come back to, like some dungeons are, and I personally repeated them because they're fun, they lure you in with fake incentives. It's typical to ZOS to release incomplete and bugged features, content or systems, and too late to fix them if ever. They even released a recent event where the event NPC Impresario was missing in the release day. As I mentioned, the delayed type of full content release, the last two companions were not added into the chapter purchase. They were added separately into the Crown Store to buy with crowns, showing an even stronger tendency towards lower effort for same money. Side note here, which may be the reason since they weren't conditionally free, I didn't get them, but I heard one of the companions is non-binary. I think they just tried the woke ocean with their corporate finger. The game leaders, and I think also devs, are disconnected from their user base. They have no videos or interaction with players, don't answer questions, don't play together with players. They also sometimes have streams to promote an upcoming feature or content where they ignore what they dislike and give canned corporate answers that don't answer to others. Other companies such as Grinding Gear Games from Path of Exile or Riot Games from League of Legends have it much better with their users. Have you seen the massive success Path of Exile 2 had on Steam? That was more than half thanks to the company running it. They are not communicating with the player base when it comes to combat and balance. They often say in forums that they want to and will improve communication. Even after 10 years they still say this. They had Q&A that got abandoned, or say that they come back with an answer or that they will investigate and silence forever afterwards. They complain that they don't communicate because we're disrespectful, but that's not an excuse to not communicate with the respectful ones. Also, they're the customers and they're disrespectful because what they paid for is not working. We're the customers, so we have all the right to be upset and communicated to. Also, most of us veterans want the game to be good and enjoyable. We don't even care that we're labeled customers by a corporation and that we're paying. We want our time we spend on the activities to be respected. There's just this guy Kevin that gives answers, mostly the same basic corporate. We're looking into it, we'll investigate. But he sometimes clarifies rumors and he even replies on Steam forum even if he wastes his attention on haters and trolls. He also helped me a few times, but why their whole communication is hung on by this thread? They don't see the problems and think everything is going good and perfect. Even in the 10-year letter, important problems weren't mentioned because, like I said, for and from casuals, nothing matters that is for veterans. And for the final, some conclusions. Game is made for casuals enjoyment, and veterans feel insulted having to put up more effort against others that are just carried by the game. If you've noticed, there's many bugs that can be solved, but there's a chance those intentionally doesn't because they have other intentions with them. This is bad practice. ZOS as a company, intercommunication and forum is proud, stubborn, harsh, and unfair. Customer service is the worst. Content is either too easy or too hard, much lacking some stepping stones. Infinite Archive might be an exception, but it doesn't allow you to control it much. So, all I showed in this review are not major problems or widely affecting players. But one lives for one of these minor problems, another lives for another one, and so these many pile up to half of the players not playing anymore. The other half feel the growing frustration from others, and only the clueless casuals remain. As long as it pays ZOS, that's not a problem. I know many players that barely know how to play but have thousands of crowns. Nothing wrong with that, but my point here was showing why veterans leave. Casuals wouldn't even know players are leaving. The game still seems in beta with all these upside down changes, lack of stability over player builds and classes power fantasy. They are not fixing or addressing issues in the proper time. A good thing in this game is the combat, and the main reason I wanted to like it. It also has not too many skill layers. It has a few like weaving or terrain positioning, both which over time have been reduced in mastery or importance. Combat is dynamic and reactive with instant dodge or block at any time during your fight, but this matters less and less. It's good that the game has all content and activities accessible to all skill levels, but they went so much on this that being a veteran here is not worth the effort and not rewarding. Another good thing is that ESO Plus is barely necessary. In all my time playing, I never once had ESO Plus except the free trials, which I wouldn't have needed either. And I manage inventory just fine with one single bank character that acts as my rewards and hirelings mail drop point. The thing is, you need to have experience with the game for this. Most of the materials are useless and not worth keeping, but you need to find out over time which ones. As for the content, all of it can be got in-game by gifting, except chapter that I mentioned earlier as pay to win. And the future doesn't show an improvement in this aspect, considering seasons. This is my final video I'm uploading for this game. Not worth the effort, and not because my videos are not viewed by many people, but because the game is not worth the effort. I'm not quitting, but I want to, because of this reason. Massive imbalance in PvP that's being allowed for so long. PvP in this game is the only endgame content that's challenging, that can be done solo in a quick, reasonable and controllable amount of time, rather or other than score pushing arenas. This is my view on ESO as a veteran. How am I a veteran? I've played a lot of time, much just on a single character, been competitive in all activities, got most of the achievements and set collections, have a lot of knowledge and resources. If not for all this, I would have left long ago, but didn't want to give up all that I worked for and invested real lifetime. I'm shifting away from it over time, as I won't continue supporting it with my full time. I will keep playing, helping players completing a dungeon or doing a battleground sometimes to keep in shape, but not anymore as my main game or on an elitist level. It's not worth it, never was. And how things are now, it will never be. I have locally a personal cache of memories and moments through the years that I will keep even once I'm fully over it. Well, a like and subscribe doesn't help me, but commenting or sharing it to others to comment might help me improve myself to express and understand other points of view, as I may be wrong or not seeing things clearly. Thanks for checking it out and tell me your take on it. Good luck.